Sorry, bit of an accident.
You crumb.
You know who I am.
That's right. Your cover's blown. My dad's upstairs.
So you'd have me believe you're P.J. Downing's daughter, huh? Impossible.
John Candy was one of the most talented actors of his generation, a comedic genius whose warmth and generosity touched everyone who knew him. But beneath the laughter, he carried a dark conviction that haunted him every single day. He believed he was destined to die young. As the years passed, those around him began noticing troubling signs. His body began failing him, but he kept pushing forward, driven by a desperate need to provide for his family. Then came a movie role he never wanted, a project he was legally forced to accept, a film shot in punishing conditions that would push his fragile body to its breaking point. What happened next shocked the world and left his family, friends, and millions of fans asking the same heartbreaking question. Could John Candy's death have been prevented? John Candy's rise to superstardom. John Franklin Candy was born on Halloween, October 31st, 1950, in Newmarket, Ontario, Canada, to a working-class family with Ukrainian, Polish, and English roots. It was a humble beginning for a man who would one day become one of the most beloved comedians of his generation. His father, Sidney James Candy, worked as a car salesman, and his mother, Evangeline, was a homemaker. The family was not wealthy, but they were close, and young John was surrounded by love. But the circumstances of his birth would be forever shadowed by tragedy. On his 5th birthday in 1955, Candy's father died suddenly from severe complications of heart disease at the age of 35. The loss was devastating, and it would shape John's life in ways he could never have anticipated. He later reflected that he had been deeply affected by his father's death, that it was an event that followed him throughout his childhood and into his adult life. The absence of his father left a void that nothing could fill. Raised by his mother Evangeline and his grandparents in East York, Candy grew up with a deep emotional void. The absence of his father left him with an early, acute awareness of sudden mortality. He was a boy who had lost his father before he truly knew him, and the weight of that loss followed him everywhere. The family struggled financially, and Candy learned early that life was unpredictable and often unfair. He later recalled that his mother had to work hard to support the family and that he often felt isolated and alone. To cope with his isolation and the pain of his childhood, he turned to humor as a protective layer. He used self-deprecating wit to diffuse social awkwardness regarding his physical size during a high school at Neil McNeil Catholic High School. He was a big kid, and his size made him a target for teasing, but he discovered that if he could make people laugh, they would stop making fun of him. Humor became his shield. Originally an aspiring athlete, Candy played star offensive tackle on his high school football team. He was good enough to dream of a future in sports, and he poured his energy into the game. He was a natural athlete, and football gave him a sense of purpose and belonging, but fate had other plans. A severe, debilitating knee injury permanently crushed his sports dreams, leaving him without the one outlet that had given him purpose and direction. The injury was a devastating blow, and Candy fell into a period of despair. Forced away from athletics, he pivoted to the school's drama club. It was a decision born of necessity, but it would become the turning point of his life. He discovered that he had a natural talent for making people laugh, and he threw himself into his new passion with the same intensity he had brought to football. He enrolled at Centennial Community College in Toronto to study theater arts, and it was there that his passion for live performance was truly ignited. He studied the craft of acting, learning the techniques that would serve him throughout his career. He was a dedicated student, and his teachers recognized his potential. After college, he began performing with local theater groups, slowly building a reputation as a talented young comedian. Candy made his official television debut in 1971 in a guest role on Police Surgeon, followed by small bit parts on low-budget Canadian TV shows and underground films like Tunnel Vision and Find the Lady. The roles were modest, but they were a start. He was learning his craft, paying his dues, and slowly building a reputation as a talented young comedian. His major career turning point occurred in 1977 when he moved to Toronto to join the legendary Second City comedy troupe. It was there that he honed his skills alongside some of the most talented comedians of his generation. He later described the experience as being like attending the best comedy school in the world. He learned to improvise, to find the humor in any situation, and to connect with audiences on a deep emotional level. His work with Second City was transformative, and it prepared him for the success that was to come. As a foundational member of Second City Television, Candy created iconic, culturally resonant characters that would become legendary. He played the sleazy variety show host Johnny LaRue and the hyperactive horror host Dr. Tongue, among many others. His performances were electric, and his talent was undeniable. He was fearless in his comedy, willing to take risks and push boundaries. His work on SCTV earned him 2 consecutive Emmy Awards for writing in 1981 and 1982, cementing his status as one of the most gifted comedic minds of his era. He successfully transitioned into major Hollywood features by playing unforgettable, scene-stealing character roles. He eventually achieved global A-list leading man status in 1984 by portraying Freddie Bauer, the wild, womanizing brother of Tom Hanks's character in the smash hit comedy Splash. The film was a massive success, and Candy became a household name. Beyond film, Candy became a massive Canadian cultural ambassador when he co-owned the Canadian Football League's Toronto Argonauts alongside Wayne Gretzky and Bruce McNall. The team won the Grey Cup Championship in 1991, a moment of triumph that brought him immense pride. He loved Canada and was proud to represent his country on the world stage. But behind the laughter and the success, John Candy was carrying a weight that no amount of fame could lift. The childhood trauma of losing his father, the insecurities about his weight, and the pressures of maintaining a public persona took a toll on his mental and physical health. He was a man who gave everything to his craft, but he struggled to find peace within himself. The battles against anxiety and secret vices. Behind the laughter and the larger-than-life persona, John Candy was a man fighting battles that no one on screen ever saw. The same humor that had made him a beloved figure was also a shield, a way of hiding the deep insecurities and anxieties that plagued him throughout his adult life. The man who made millions laugh was often the one who could not find peace within himself. Unlike the typical Hollywood tale of scandal and dysfunction, Candy's love life was remarkably stable. He met Rosemary Margaret Hobor on a blind date in the 1970s, and the connection was immediate. They married in 1979 and remained fiercely loyal to each other until his death. Theirs was a drama-free partnership, a rarity in an industry defined by tumultuous relationships and public breakups. Rosemary was his anchor, the steady presence that kept him grounded when the pressures of fame threatened to overwhelm him. Candy actively kept his 2 children, Jennifer and Christopher, entirely away from the toxic Hollywood spotlight. He raised them in a grounded environment, far from the excesses of Los Angeles. His wife worked quietly as an abstract ceramicist and painter, pursuing her own artistic passions away from the cameras. Candy was determined to give his children the stable, loving childhood he had been denied, and he succeeded in creating a home that was a refuge from the chaos of his professional life. But the weight of public cruelty was a constant source of pain. Despite his jolly, gentle giant on-screen persona, Candy was deeply, chronically hurt by vicious public insults and cruel media jibes directed at his heavy physical frame. He was often the butt of jokes about his weight, and the comments cut deep. He wore a perpetual smile, but inside, he was hurting. The media's obsession with his size was relentless, and it reinforced the insecurities that had plagued him since childhood. Behind closed doors, Candy suffered from severe, agonizing panic attacks and intense social phobia. He was so intimidated by public speaking that he openly admitted to choking up and freezing during his single appearance on The Tonight Show. The experience was humiliating for a man whose entire career depended on his ability to perform in front of audiences. The fear of public speaking was paralyzing, and it forced him to turn down opportunities that would have raised his profile even further. Food became an unhealthy way for him to cope. Close friends and producers later said that Candy often turned to overeating as a response to anxiety, using food in an attempt to find temporary comfort and distraction from his emotional struggles. While it may have provided brief relief, it also contributed to the health challenges he faced later in life. He found himself in a difficult cycle, relying on food to manage his anxiety, only to feel even more overwhelmed afterward. Driven by constant workplace stress, Candy was also a heavy smoker, reportedly going through more than a full pack every day for much of his adult life. It was a habit he could not break, and it added another layer of damage to a body already under immense strain. His health was deteriorating, but he was unable to stop. To survive the grueling demands of fame and his underlying mental health battles, Candy went through undocumented periods of both alcohol and illicit substance abuse during the peak of his 1980s career. He used these substances to find temporary relief from the anxiety and depression that haunted him, but they also took a toll on his health and his relationships. He was a man in crisis, and he was using whatever means he could find to keep going. Candy was deeply desperate to get healthy. He once successfully lost over 100 pounds on a strict diet program, but his mental health issues caused him to quickly relapse and gain all the weight back. The weight fluctuation was a reflection of his internal struggle. He wanted to be healthy, but he could not escape the emotional struggles that faced him. The cycle of weight loss and gain was exhausting, and it left him feeling defeated. He faced immense professional frustration because Hollywood executives strictly refused to view him as a serious dramatic actor. They forced him to remain heavy because they believed his marketability depended entirely on his size. The typecasting was a prison, and Candy longed to break free. He wanted to play complex, romantic, or deeply dramatic leading roles, but the industry could not see past his physicality. The rejection was a constant source of pain, a reminder that he was valued for his size rather than his talent. Production studios routinely exploited his size for cheap visual gags, which took a massive emotional toll on Candy. He was tired of being the big guy, tired of being the butt of the joke. He had more to offer, but the industry refused to let him show it. The frustration was immense, and it contributed to the anxiety and depression that plagued him. John Candy was a man in crisis, struggling with battles that no amount of fame could silence. His body was beginning to betray him, and the warning signs were impossible to ignore, the signs of trouble and looming disaster. John Candy had spent his entire adult life under a terrifying psychological cloud, deeply believing he was biologically hardwired to die young due to the aggressive history of fatal heart disease running through his paternal line. His father had died at 35, and Candy was convinced that the same fate awaited him. The fear was not irrational, it was rooted in the painful reality of his family history, and it haunted him every single day. The shadow of his father's death followed him everywhere, a constant reminder that life was fragile and unpredictable. Legendary director Carl Reiner verified that Candy explicitly referred to his family genetics as a literal Damocles sword hanging directly over his head. The metaphor was apt. In Greek mythology, Damocles was a courtier who envied the king's power, only to discover that the king sat under a sword suspended by a single hair. Candy understood that metaphor all too well. He lived with a constant, eerie feeling that he was living on strictly borrowed time, that his life could end at any moment. The psychological burden was immense, and it shaped every decision he made. He was driven to succeed, to provide for his family, and to make the most of the time he believed he had left. But the very success he pursued was also contributing to his decline. Candy did not want to film Wagons East. He was legally and contractually mandated to star in the movie by Carolco Pictures to settle a legal debt from a completely different scrapped film project. The project had been called Bartholomew v. Neff, and when it fell apart, the studio demanded that Candy fulfill his contractual obligations by appearing in another film. He had no choice. He was trapped by a contract he could not escape, and the film that would become his last was one he never wanted to make. The irony was bitter. He was working on a project he despised, and it would be the project that ended everything. The production was a nightmare from the start. Principal photography for the Western comedy took place in the rugged desert terrain of Durango, Mexico, and Sierra de Organos National Park, situated at an elevation of over 6,000 feet above sea level. The altitude was punishing, and the combination of thin, high-altitude air, heavy dust, and blistering, relentless desert heat put immediate cardiorespiratory strain on Candy's highly vulnerable body. He was a man who had already been struggling with his health, and the conditions were making things worse. The air was so thin that even healthy crew members struggled to breathe. For Candy, it was a constant battle. When filming commenced in January 1994, Candy was at his heaviest lifetime weight, exceeding 375 pounds. The excess weight made basic movements in a heavy period Western costume exhausting. He struggled to walk, to climb, and to perform the physical comedy that had made him famous. The costume was suffocating, the heat was oppressive, and his body was screaming for relief. He was sweating profusely before he even started moving, and the physical demands of the role only made things worse. Terrified of being separated from his wife and kids, Candy insisted on flying back to Los Angeles every single weekend. Co-star Robert Picardo noted that this brutal weekly commute left him sleep-deprived, drained, and physically compromised on set. The jet lag was relentless, and the constant travel robbed him of the rest he desperately needed. He was running on empty, and his body was paying the price. The flights were exhausting, and the time zones were disorienting. He would arrive back on set on Monday mornings, looking worse than he had when he left. The shooting schedule was front-loaded with the most demanding scenes. Due to a severe local drought and total lack of rainfall, director Peter Markle was forced to shoot all massive, physically demanding outdoor travel sequences up front. Candy was subjected to consecutive 12 to 14-hour working days under the desert sun. He was required to ride horses, which was physically demanding for a man of his size. He had to pull wagons, which required immense upper body strength. He had to perform stunts that would have been challenging for a man half his weight. On March 2, 1994, Candy brought a local priest to the remote desert set for Ash Wednesday. Because they were actively rolling cameras, the priest had to apply the holy ashes discreetly under the actors' hairlines so it wouldn't ruin the visual continuity of the film. The moment was poignant, a quiet act of faith in the midst of chaos. Candy's character was being spiritually marked, a foreshadowing of the sacrifice he was about to make. But it was also a reminder of the fragility of life, a theme that would take on tragic significance in the days to come. During his absolute final week of life, crew members openly observed Candy sweating profusely, gasping for breath, and requiring heavy, frequent breaks on a specialized chair between short takes. The chair had to be reinforced to support his weight, and even then it groaned under the pressure. He had been given the nickname the Clump on set, a reference to the heavy, shuffling noise made by his boots as he trudged through the desert. He had lost all sense of humor, rarely laughing anymore. He had become quiet and withdrawn. The life of the party had become a ghost of himself. He was trying to finish the movie, but his body was giving out. The signs of trouble were everywhere. The weight was too much. The altitude was too high. The schedule was too punishing. The stress was too intense. But Candy kept going, driven by a sense of obligation and a desperate need to provide for his family. He believed he was living on borrowed time, and he was determined to make the most of whatever time he had left. He had no idea that the end was so close. The crew noticed that his breathing was labored, even when he was resting. His skin had a grayish pallor, a sign that his body was struggling to get enough oxygen. He was coughing frequently, a deep, phlegmy cough that suggested fluid was building up in his lungs. His hands were shaking, and his coordination was off. He was a man in crisis, and everyone on set knew it, but no one said anything. The tragedy is that no one intervened and that no one recognized the danger until it was too late. What happened next would shock the world and leave a legacy of grief that would endure for decades. The tragic, sudden death of John Candy. Thursday, March 3, 1994, began like any other day on the punishing set of Wagons East. But for John Candy, it would be his final day on Earth. He spent that day filming his scenes for the movie, a performance that director Peter Markle later praised as a brilliant, inspired day of acting. Candy was in good spirits, seemingly energized by the knowledge that the brutal shoot would soon come to an end. He had endured weeks of punishing heat, thin mountain air, and grueling physical demands, and now he could see the finish line. Feeling an immense sense of relief after wrapping a brutal shooting day, a jubilant Candy stayed behind late into the evening. He was determined to do something special for the crew that had supported him through the difficult production. He cooked a massive spaghetti dinner entirely from scratch for his personal production assistants and crew. It was a gesture of gratitude, a way of saying thank you to the people who had worked alongside him in the desert heat. He was a man who gave generously, even when he was exhausted, and that night was no exception. The crew gathered together, sharing a meal and enjoying a moment of camaraderie that would become their final memory of the beloved comedian. Just past midnight going into Friday, March 4th, Candy called his co-stars Richard Lewis and Robert Picardo in their respective hotel rooms. He enthusiastically thanked them for their hard work and sounded like a happy kid, full of energy and optimism. The calls were brief but heartfelt, a final gesture of appreciation from a man who valued the people he worked with. Neither Lewis nor Picardo could have known that these would be their last conversations with their friend and colleague. Candy's final phone call of the night was to his 9-year-old son, Christopher. Christopher later revealed his father's final words to him were a quiet, comforting statement of love and a good night. It was a simple, tender moment between father and son, the kind of exchange that happens in families every night. But for Christopher, those words would carry the weight of a lifetime. They would become a treasured memory, a final connection to a father who was taken far too soon. At approximately 6 a.m. on Friday, March 4th, while resting in his designated production trailer on the Durango filming site, John Candy suffered a massive, fatal myocardial infarction entirely in his sleep. His heart, weakened by years of strain, simply gave out. When Candy failed to report to his early morning hair and makeup trailer, panic began to spread through the production. He was known for his punctuality, and his absence was immediately noticed. Production staff knocked heavily on his door, but there was no answer. Receiving no response, they entered to find him completely unresponsive in his bed. The scene was devastating. A man who had brought so much joy to the world was now gone. Paramedics arrived swiftly, but were unable to revive him. Hector Partida, a spokesman for the Durango state government, officially announced Candy's sudden death to the international media later that morning. The news spread quickly, and the world reacted with shock and grief. A man who had seemed so full of life, so vibrant and joyful, was gone at 43. Because his extensive medical history, weight struggles, and severe genetic heart defects made the cause of death overwhelmingly obvious, the Candy family chose to bypass an autopsy to preserve his physical dignity. The decision was a private one, made with respect for the man who had given so much to the public. They wanted to protect him from the indignity of a post-mortem examination, to allow him to rest in peace without further intrusion. The entertainment world reacted with profound, widespread grief. His funeral mass was held at St. Martin of Tours Catholic Church in Los Angeles, where his lifelong friend Dan Aykroyd delivered a heartbreaking eulogy to an audience of Hollywood icons. The church was filled with the people who had known and loved him, his family, his friends, his colleagues, and the countless fans who had been touched by his work. Aykroyd spoke of Candy's generosity, his kindness, and his unwavering commitment to making people laugh. Candy was entombed inside the main mausoleum at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City, California. His final resting place is a quiet, peaceful spot, a place where fans can pay their respects to the man who brought so much joy into their lives. The grave is marked with a simple plaque, a reminder of the legacy he left behind. At the exact time of his sudden passing, Candy had only completed roughly 75% of his required leading scenes for Wagons East. The studio was left with a massive logistical crisis. How do you finish a film when the leading actor is dead? Screenwriter Matthew Carlson was forced to execute immediate emergency rewrites, completely shifting the central focus of the remaining plot lines onto co-star Richard Lewis. The script had to be restructured, the story had to be adjusted, and the film had to be completed without its lead actor. To finish the film without their star, production hired a physical body double and stuntmen for wide shots. They utilized primitive 1994 computer-assisted special effects to literally copy Candy's face from earlier scenes and superimpose it onto the double's body. The effect was crude by modern standards, but it was the best technology could offer at the time. In one highly noticeable sequence where Candy's character pours out a bottle of liquor, editors digitally rotoscoped an old shot of Candy, completely swapped out the background, and pasted it into the new scene. The illusion was imperfect, but it allowed the film to be completed. Released theatrically on August 26, 1994, 5 months after his death, Wagons East was a massive critical and commercial disaster. It grossed a meager $3.7 million and received a rare, devastating 0% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The film was panned by critics and ignored by audiences, a sad final chapter for a beloved actor. The film that Candy never wanted to make became his final screen appearance, and the reviews were a painful reminder of the circumstances surrounding his death. Candy's actual final completed movie performance was in Michael Moore's satirical comedy, Canadian Bacon, which was filmed long before Wagons East, but faced prolonged distribution delays, finally releasing posthumously in 1995. The film was a modest success, and Candy's performance was praised as a return to form. But for those who knew him, it was a bittersweet reminder of what had been lost. The death of John Candy was a tragedy that shook the entertainment world to its core. A man who had given so much to his craft, who had brought laughter to millions, was gone far too soon. Candy's legacy lives on in the films he left behind, in the characters he created, and in the laughter he brought to so many. He was a beloved figure, a man who was cherished by his family, his friends, and his fans. His death was a tragedy, but his life was a gift, and for those who loved him, he will never be forgotten. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.